I think what we've seen, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, is a pretty significant shift to absolutely trying to meet students where they are and to try to give that student an individualized experience. And that very much speaks to our ability to engage and support students that are bringing mental health needs to our campus.
Welcome to Small College America, a podcast dedicated to exploring the role and value of small colleges in the higher education landscape. I'm Dean Hoke, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kent Barnds.
Thanks, Dean. Today, we have joining us Dr. Wes Brooks. Wes serves as Vice President and Dean of Student Life at Augustana College, where he leads a wide portfolio supporting student success. As part of his portfolio, he has residence life, athletics, counseling services, public safety, and campus engagement. Known for his energetic, student-centered leadership style, Wes plays a key role in shaping campus culture and advancing holistic student development. Before coming to Augustana, he held various leadership roles at Iowa Wesleyan University, Wartburg College, and Grandview University, even spending time early in his career as an assistant men's basketball coach. Wes earned his bachelor's degree from Grandview University and both his master's and PhD in higher education from Iowa State University. Outside of work, Wes enjoys family time, coaching youth sports, golf, getting better at golf too, and theater, bringing that same enthusiasm to everything he does on campus. Wes is also a colleague of mine, and I'm delighted to have you here. Wes, we spend so much time on this podcast with academics and presidents and trustees. Sure. I'll speak for my colleague, Dean, that we're really excited to have somebody who has student life as part of their portfolio, given the importance at a small college. So I'll turn it over to Dean to ask the first question, but welcome, Wes. We're glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you both very much. Glad to be here.
Well, why don't we start with the whole field of student life? And my first question is pretty basic. I mean, why did you enter this particular field of student life, and what drew you to this work?
Sure. That's a very easy question, Dean, for me to answer. So during my undergrad experience, I had planned to be a secondary education history instructor. And very early on in my career, in my college career, I had the opportunity to get involved in student activities through a variety of clubs, and then eventually started working in residential life. And prior to either of those things, I was part of the men's basketball program at my alma mater. And what I realized was there were adults, there were people in the field that were helping shape this work. And it wasn't just a bunch of students managing housing or managing student activities. And I said to myself, these people have jobs doing this, and this is really cool. So I started to think more around, could I educate students outside of the classroom versus doing it, and at the college level versus doing it in secondary education at the high school level in history. And one particular story that really pushed me to this side of education was my sophomore year in college. I was doing my first in-class practicum experience, and I was asked to grade an assignment. And as I was doing that, I thought to myself, I'm grading on content expertise here, but I know there are certain students in this class that have really put a ton of time and effort into the grade that they're going to earn on this. And the grade is less than students who are extremely gifted, naturally talented in this course, and aren't putting the kind of effort in and earning a very strong grade. And I wrestled with that extensively during that practicum experience my sophomore year. And I came to the realization that maybe high school teaching wasn't the path that I was called to be on, but rather educate folks outside of the classroom and to do it in ways that I had experienced myself in college up to that point through residential life, athletics, and student activities. So it kind of moved me into the higher education path rather than teaching in the K-12 system.
Well, let's keep going down that path a little bit. Student services, deans of student life have existed for a long time. But at the same time, as you said, I don't know if people totally understand the position and what it's supposed to do. I'm very curious. I'd like to hear your point of view about the scope of the position and how you describe it as a vice president of student life.
Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned in the opening, it's a wide umbrella of responsibility that tends to fall in the student life area. The easiest way to probably articulate it is that the vast majority of things that involve students outside of the classroom post admission involve student life. So things such as athletics, residential life, police and public safety, campus ministries at religiously affiliated institutions, which a lot of small colleges are, counseling services, Greek life, recreation, intramural activity, those types of things, a lot of leadership development. And so the role of the vice president is really to just, in large part, keep all the trains on the tracks and keep things moving forward, because there are a lot of really talented folks in student life and student affairs beyond the vice presidents. It's those directors, it's those deans, it's those live-in professionals in housing that do so much of that important work with students. And so it's my role as a vice president to be strategic in how we continue to convey the appropriate experiences and deliver on those promises that we make to students and their families when they enroll at the institution. And then in partnership with so many other really strong professionals in student life and student affairs, we deliver that experience. And what we're really aiming to do, Dean, is we are trying to prepare students for life after college. And in the meantime, while they're with us, to have a terrific experience while they're here outside of the classroom. And I think the best institutions that do student life really well connect what's happening outside of the classroom to what those students are experiencing in the classroom, and to try to connect those dots and make sure that they know what's happening with in their life post college.
Very good. Ken?
Well, so across higher education, but also throughout the media, we keep on hearing that student mental health needs have grown significantly and that there are lots of changes. From where you sit at a place like Augustana, it's changed the most. And how has that reshaped not only the work of student life, but really the institutional approach? Because mental health has kind of surfaced as an institutional issue, but in your portfolio, you have direct oversight of caring of students.
Yeah, it's a great question, Kent. I think it's really kind of twofold in terms of what's really changed, certainly during my 23-year career in student life. But first and foremost, I think we all acknowledge that mental health is a serious matter, just kind of nationally, globally, but certainly between that 18 to 22-year-old national, the age of our national colleges and students here in the United States. It's an issue, and it's something that we absolutely want to address. And I think that we do it really well at the small college level, particularly because we know our students. And we know their faces, we know their names, and we engage them at a very intentional and caring level on a very regular basis. But there are two very specific things, in my opinion, that have changed over time. The first is the stigma, and at this point, lack thereof of stigma surrounding mental health in higher education. So we now know that students are coming to campuses with their mental health, with their needs, and trying to be resilient, trying to focus on their well-being, but they're not afraid to share both with their peers and with professionals in the institution what those needs may be. And when I started 22, 23 years ago, I mean, we were kind of guessing, we were kind of throwing darts at what students may need in order to be successful from a mental health perspective. And with that stigma dramatically reduced, if not almost non-existent at this point, students are helping institutions like Augustana have a better understanding of what their needs are and how we work through those collectively with that student and with their peers. So that would be one. The second thing that I think has dramatically shifted is this concept of being a student-ready college versus enrolling college-ready students. So to expand on that just a little bit, I mean, knowing that our students are bringing their whole selves to Augustana or to their particular institution. I would say 10 years ago, maybe even pre-pandemic, there was still this focus of we expect students to meet the college where the college is. And so if you are going to enroll at an institution, you're going to, for lack of a better term, fall in line with the norms, with the traditions, with the way that particular college does business. And I think what we've seen, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, is a pretty significant shift to absolutely trying to meet students where they are and to try to give that student an individualized experience. And that very much speaks to our ability to engage and support students that are bringing mental health needs to our campus. Neurodivergent students are certainly folks that are coming to campus. And I think that's happening in large part because we are trying to really focus on that individual student, meet them where they are, be student ready, and have them feel supported. And so that would be where I see a big shift lately has been stigma is dramatically reduced, which also creates these really cool synergies between peers, which we have found to be really helpful and successful in navigating mental health on campus with that peer support. But then also the idea that institutions are trying to meet students where they are.
Thanks, Wes. I'm going to ask you a quick follow-up. I want to, parents, of course, there's this big separation that happens, especially at a small college and a residential college, between parents and students. When students arrive at a place like Augustana, or really any of the places that you've worked, which have all been small colleges, what's one challenge that you would identify that catches both students and their parents by surprise, that they just couldn't have anticipated, that your team spends time working through with the students?
Sure. I mean, you hear about the folks that always think they're going to be homesick, or you hear that they might struggle in classes. I think everybody predicts some of those things. The thing that stands out to me, Kent, is what I call autonomy fatigue. I think folks that are coming as first-year students, and certainly their parents, particularly if it's the first student to go to college out of their family, parents and students do not understand how much autonomy and independence our college students have on our campuses. So, every day, at least until they have some sort of rhythm and routine, they ask themselves, what am I doing today? And they have thousands of opportunities and thousands of things that they could choose from. That can become overwhelming. Who am I going to do these things with? Have I established a friend group? Maybe I feel like I've established 3 or 4 different friend groups. So making those decisions, how am I balancing my social aspirations versus what's going on in the classroom and in my course content? Those are decisions that I have to make, and they are mine to make in most cases. And so I think that's a piece where you don't really think that much about it. You think about homesickness, you think about navigating the campus and things, but it's the actual opportunity of choice that our students face that really can become overwhelming and create fatigue. And before you know it, they're into a cycle of they're always tired, they're not sleeping well, they're over-involved, those types of things, because they have this autonomy, and it puts them in a position early on to navigate that. And I think some family members, parents, and students don't necessarily think about things that way.
Right. Well, Wes, why don't we move into a different section of this, and that's particularly persistence. It isn't driven just by academics anymore. It doesn't seem to be. I mean, it seems closely connected to belonging and engagement, as what you've been talking about. From your perspective, how does your division influence whether students stay and succeed?
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately the goal, right? I mean, as I've already
Yes.
mentioned, I mean, we want to prepare students for life after college, and the only way to get to life after college is to complete college. So we really want to see our students persist, and we want to help in the retention efforts any way that we can. A few things come to mind, Dean, specifically with that. One is genuine support. I mean, as we've talked about being a student-ready college, the more support that we can provide students, the better those students are going to be. There may be the vast majority of students may not need individualized care, individualized attention, and they're going to navigate things and they're going to be successful. We also know that a lot of institutions place a lot of importance on the students who are really struggling to connect and to engage and to enjoy their experience. But then there's also that murky middle, that tier somewhere in the middle that is often lost between those students who the institution really doesn't worry about in terms of their experience, and then the students that we're highly concerned about. But a lot of times we lose that middle tier. And so the more support that we can provide to all students is important. Something else is problem solving, particularly early on in a student's experience, is there again with that autonomy fatigue. They're trying to navigate an institution that they haven't been a part of before. They're trying to solve problems if there are ways that we can assist and support students in navigating this place, particularly when they run into some roadblocks, that is very helpful in terms of persistence and completion. But one of the things that I think is really important that we do at Augustana, and I know other places do as well, is we lean into our community principles. And one of our community principles is care. And so if we can genuinely show care to our students, they feel that, right? And that's why they're at a small college. That's why they're at a place like Augustana, to feel that care, to have that connection. And so we talk a lot about being all things to all people. And I think what Augustana has done really well is we've pivoted that kind of slogan, that national slogan of being all things to all people, into being some things to all people. And one of those some things is caring for our students. And so, there might be a student that wants to play cricket. There might be another student that wants to play American football. There might be a student that likes jazz. There might be a student that likes R&B. I might not be an expert in all of those things, but what we try to teach our folks in student life to have as much expertise as possible in is showing care around the student that wants to be involved in cricket. I may not know anything about it, but I care about that student. I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn, and I'm going to provide that care. And so I think that's how we really try to manage persistence and retention success at Augustana.
Right. Quick follow-up. Appears to me that the first semester is always the semester, or particularly for the freshman students and all the different things that you've been talking about, and if they're going to persist or not. I'm curious, from your side of the world, what signals do you watch for to see if they're doing it, if they're struggling? Are there certain tells that you see?
Yeah. Well, there's a few. I mean, first of all, there's kind of two timelines associated with that. One is very early, like within the first 72 hours that a student comes to campus, they move in, and you get a sense of their connection to the institution almost immediately. And you've got your resident assistants, your community advisors, your orientation staff, and they can feel that very quickly. And that some signs might be just true disengagement from some of the activities. When we show care and we listen and engage, you hear things from students that really trigger, like, I'm not enjoying my experience here. I want to go home. But when that's said right away, those are folks that we certainly pay attention to. And then I would say as you get closer, somewhere between weeks 5 and 7, it tends to be where we start to see some disconnect from our students that we're concerned about in terms of retention. Some signs would be class attendance. Again, at a small college like Augustana, professors engage in their classrooms. It's not necessarily lecture-based. They know who's there. They know who's not there. And class attendance is a piece to that. We also pay very close attention to what's happening in the dining hall. How many students are eating alone? How many students are not engaged in the dining community? As a residential campus like we are, housing and dining are huge components of that experience. And so if they're not engaged in that way, that can be a warning sign for us. And it definitely can ping in terms of what that looks like. And then we also certainly think about early warning systems that we have that could be involved with residential life, academics, student activities, all within a platform that we're able to make comments, notes, commentary in there, and then we can try to engage them from a variety of angles, whether that be a coach talking to a student athlete who might not be having a great experience, or someone in the Greek community having a Greek advisor talk to that student. So early warning platforms and communication systems are important, but we definitely can know very early on. And then we tend to see a little bit more disengagement in the life of the college, how many times they go home on the weekend, for example, things like that, around kind of mid-semester.
Very good. Okay.
It's like an athlete. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. It's one of the questions, but I'm going to lead with the second question rather than the first.
Okay.
What is something your team does every single day that most faculty, administrators, trustees wouldn't see and wouldn't know? I think that this is such an important question. So what are you doing behind the scenes people wouldn't know that ensure student success, or at least focus on student success?
I have two answers for you, Ken. I know you asked for one, but I have two. The first one that I think very few people know is that in student life, we say no a lot. We believe strongly in both challenging and nurturing students. And part of that challenge is to say no at times. And a lot of places don't have to do that, right? We're going to problem solve. We're going to work through things with you. We're going to help you along to the answer of yes. And in student life, on a daily basis, folks are having to tell students no for a variety of reasons. And the beauty of what that looks like is that most student affairs professionals have gotten so good at articulating no to students when they're our customers, right? Students are our customers. Their families are our customers. And customers want to hear what they want to hear a lot. And so to challenge and nurture students, but be able to tell them no, but to do it in a way that they leave the office, they leave the building, understanding and feeling okay about that interaction is something we do every day. And then the second thing would be we genuinely have one-on-one engagement with students on a daily basis in student life in small colleges. It is not some mass email communication or some sort of open forum Q&A that 300 students come to every month to learn more about the student experience. We are having one-on-one interactions, whether it be to assist a student who's having trouble navigating something or to assist a student from a mental health perspective, whatever the case might be. There are so many one-on-one connections between student affairs professionals and students that, I mean, it's hard to really even quantify what that looks like. But that one-on-one connection, again, going back to this idea of showing care and genuinely engaging with students and seeing peers genuinely engage with students on a daily basis is something that I don't necessarily think everyone in the campus community would understand. But we also say no way more than people would ever imagine.
I appreciate both of those answers, and I'm glad that you actually answered with two things. So I think that that's really helpful. Dean, what's the next question?
Well, let's take a look at probably the questions. We're talking about a lot of the solutions, a lot of things that you're doing, but I'm curious, is there a challenge today particularly that really you haven't been able to figure out, or colleges in general really haven't been able to figure out how to solve? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, to me, this is something that I think is being talked about at most campuses across the country right now. And the way that I would describe it is we have not solved or the challenge of a genuine sense of belonging on campus. I think that we have done a very good job of creating manufactured belonging at Augustana and at any other campus. But what we need to do, that challenge that we need to overcome, is how we go from kind of that surface level connection that student affairs professionals and other folks on any college campus can create to that deep and meaningful, genuine connection. Because in my opinion, much of what we try to do in student affairs and in higher education centers around that social aspect. And so the social crowd is going to be social. They're going to be social regardless of how we create that social experience. The question needs to be asked, what about students who are less social but have a genuine craving for connection at the institution? How do we create that beyond some sort of manufactured connection? And when I say manufactured, a couple of examples that come to mind include, and I think this happens at most institutions, we have some sort of orientation group that may have a mentor as part of that orientation group, and they're assigned by last name, by room assignment, by a questionnaire they fill out prior to coming to campus. And we just sometimes assume that those 12 people in that group are absolutely going to connect. They're going to be best friends for the next 4 years of their experience. And that rarely happens. When it does, those are the really great ones to have coming back for a homecoming 50 years later, talking about their orientation group. But that's the rarity, right? Or the same thing with living learning communities in the residence halls. These folks are signing up for things pre-enrollment. They come, we've assigned them to this place, we're manufacturing this level of connection, and sometimes it's inauthentic, right? And so I think the more genuine, authentic, meaningful, deep connections that we can create on the college campus is really important for us. One of the ways that I hope that, and I think we're trying to do this now even at Augustana, but over time, I think a big piece of the puzzle in small college America is time itself. We have to push students to prioritize relationships and prioritize connection with others versus all of the other opportunities that exist at a place like Augustana. There's 150 clubs. Some of our students are involved in 20 of them. They're an athlete. They're a tutor. They have a student employment job. And they're bouncing from thing to thing when they're having lunch with somebody sitting right across the table from them that could be their best friend for life. And they turn that off 5 minutes before the conversation gets good because they got to run to their next thing. And so prioritizing time and figuring out ways to deepen that connection and sense of belonging at an institution is something that I think our sector is continuing to push for.
Okay, we're running out of time, and I'm afraid we're going to have to ask our last question.
Well, Wes, we give all of our guests the opportunity to get a crystal ball out and predict the future. So, looking ahead 5 years, how do you see the role of student life and your own position evolving as colleges continue to face enrollment, financial, and student experience pressures?
Yeah, in 5 years, within the next 5 years, I think there'll be a lot more of the same. I think that we're right on the cutting edge of what it means to be a student-ready college, to meet students where they are. I think with enrollment pressures, there's going to be even more of an emphasis on individualized care and attention for students to try to make them feel at home, get their home away from home in a place like Augustana. So again, I think we really want to try to crack the code on what it means to have meaningful belonging at an institution. I think that's important. But then the other side of that, Kent, in terms of specific things, I think we want to make easy things easy. And we want to keep easy things easy. I think at times we can overcomplicate and overthink things, whether that be how a student literally connects to the Wi-Fi at your institution. Is it easy to get on the Wi-Fi at Augustana College? That is a difference maker in terms of how they feel engaged. Is it easy to register for classes? Is it easy to understand how I navigate the dining hall? These types of things, while we're here to challenge and nurture, it might seem counter to try to create some things to be easy at your college or institution, but there are a lot of hard things. Classes are hard. Relationships are hard. Living with a roommate for the first time in potentially 15, 18 years, very hard things. So if there are things that we can genuinely make easy for our students to navigate and have that experience, to be better prepared for life after college, I think that's what the next 5 years looks like, is trying to identify how we get them connected in a very meaningful way, but how we keep the easy things easy so they can focus on the hard things to really thrive and be successful.
Very good. Well, Wes, I want to thank you very much for joining us today and giving our listeners such a clear look at student life at Augustana, supporting
my pleasure.
students, and long-term success. I mean, it's a subject we don't hear enough about, quite frankly. And so I really want to thank you for coming on today and educating our fellow colleagues. But we also need to be closing out. And for those listening or viewing, if you'd like to learn more about Small College America, visit our website at www.smallcollegeamerica.net, where you can learn more about the upcoming episodes, contact us, suggest topics you'd like to cover. And also, we'd encourage you to subscribe, of course, to the show via YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast device. The episode of Small College America is made possible with the underwriting support of Edge Alliance Group, a higher education consulting firm that champions small colleges and the communities they serve. On behalf of our guest, Wes Brooks, my co-host, Kent Barnds, and I, thank you very much for joining us. Bye, everybody.